Good evening, YouTube. My name is Nubia. I am in recovery. I am reading out of the Life Recovery Bible, all the way from Anoka, Minnesota. And today we are continuing in Kings, Second Kings, and in chapter. Hold on. I think it's chapter 3. No, I don't know for sure. I'm not gonna guess. Chapter 2. 2 Kings chapter 2. Chapter 2. Elijah taken into heaven. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in the whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were traveling from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Bethel." But Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went down together to Bethel. The group of prophets from Bethel came to Elisha and asked him, "Did you know that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" "Of course I know," Elisha answered, "but be quiet about it." Then Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Jericho." But Elisha replied again, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went on together to Jericho. Then the group of prophets from Jericho came to Elisha and asked him, "Did you know that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" "Of course I know," Elisha answered, "but be quiet about it." Then Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to the Jordan River." But again, Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went on together. 50 men from the group of prophets also went and washed from a distance as Elijah and Elisha stopped beside the Jordan River. Then Elijah folded his cloak together and struck the water with it. The river divided, and the two of them went across on dry ground. When they came to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken away." Then Elisha replied, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor." "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah replied. "If you see me when I am taken from you, then you will get your request. But if not, then you won't." As they were walking alone and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared, drawn by horses of fire. It drove between the two men, separating them, and Elijah was carried by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel." And as they disappeared from sight, Elijah tore his clothes in distress. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, which had fallen when he was taken up. Then Elisha returned to the bank of the Jordan River. Why is this making me cry? they're saying goodbye. You know. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, which had fallen when he was taken up. Then Elisha returned to the bank of the Jordan River. Somebody's sensitive tonight. Just gratitude. Sensitive gratitude. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, which had fallen when he was taken up. Then Elisha returned to the bank of the Jordan River. He struck the water with Elisha's cloak and cried out, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" Then the river divided, and Elisha went across. When the group of prophets from Jericho saw from a distance what happened, they exclaimed, "Elijah's spirit rests upon Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. "Sir," they said, "just say the word, and 50 of your strongest men will search the wilderness for your master. Perhaps the spirit of the Lord have left him on some mountain or in some valley." "No," Elisha said, "don't send him." But they kept urging him until they shamed him into agreeing, and he finally said, "All right, send them." So 50 men searched for 3 days but did not find Elijah. Elisha was still at Jericho when they returned. "Didn't I tell you not to go?" he asked. Elisha's first miracles. One day, the leaders of the town of Jericho visited Elisha. "We have a problem, my lord," they told him. "This town is located in pleasant surroundings, as you can see, but the water is bad, and the land is unproductive." Elisha said, "Bring me a new bowl with salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the spring that supplied the town with water and threw the salt into it. And he said, "This is what the Lord says. I have purified this water. I will no longer cause death or infertility." And the water has remained pure ever since, just as Elisha said. Elisha left Jericho and went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, a group of boys from the town began mocking and making fun of him. "Go away, Baldy," they chanted. "Go away, Baldy." Elisha turned around and looked at them, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of them. Mauled. From there, Elisha went to Mount Carmel and finally returned to Samaria. Footnotes. Elijah was Elisha's mentor. It must have been difficult for Elisha to accept the fact that Elijah was about to be taken away from him. But instead of denying or refusing to deal with Elijah's imminent departure, Elisha made the most of his last moment with his mentor, staying with him until Elijah was carried away into heaven. If we can admit that we may lose someone, we will be better able to cope with the loss when the time comes. Our ability to deal with future difficulties will be affected by a willingness to face the realities at hand. It is difficult to get beyond the physical loss of a loved one, especially when it's someone we have greatly admired. The trauma of such a loss, however, can be minimized through our faith in God. We can know that our loved ones are in God's hands if they have trusted their life to God through Jesus Christ. If they have trusted their life to God through Jesus Christ. We too are in God's hands as we follow His program for recovery. When we lose someone close, God has not abandoned us. Rather, He is there ready to comfort us with His love and compassion. Recognizing His positive reality can help us go on with our lives until God grants us a heavenly promotion of our own. Amen. We all recognize the warping impact that a dysfunctional hero can have on us. But we should also realize that a godly mentor can make a significant positive impact. Here, for example, Elisha took over where Elijah left off. Elisha was recognized as Elijah's successor. He lived with the same faith and commitment as his mentor. We too need to seek out godly examples who will help us put God first in our lives. Taking a first step toward recovery is not enough That's not... Okay, chapter 3. War between Israel and Moab. I can see the fire. The phone is in the middle. War between Israel and Moab. Ahab's son Joram began to rule over Israel in the 18th year of King Jehoshaphat's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 12 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, but not to the same extent as his father and mother. He at least tore down the sacred pillar of Baal that his father had set up. Nevertheless, he continued in the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had committed and led people of Israel to commit. King Mesha of Moab was a sheep breeder. He used to pay the king of Israel an annual tribute of 100 lambs and the wool of 100 rams. But after Ahab's death, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So King Joram promptly mustered the army of Israel and marched from Samaria. On the way, he sent his message to King Jehoshaphat of Judah. The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you join me in the battle against him? And Jehoshaphat replied, Why, of course, you and I are as one. . My troops are your troops, and my horses are your horses. Then Jehoshaphat asked, What wood will we take? We will attack from the wilderness of Edom, Joram replied. The king of Edom and his troops joined them, and all of three armies traveled along a roundabout route through the wilderness for 7 days. But there was no water for the men or their animals. What should we do? The king of Israel cried out. The Lord has brought the three of us here to let the king of Moab defeat us. But King Jehoshaphat of Judah asked, Is there no prophet of the Lord with us? If there is, we can ask the Lord what to do through him. One of the king's Joram's officers replied, Elisha, son of Shaphat, is here. He used to be Elisha's personal assistant. Jehoshaphat said, Yes, the Lord speaks through him. So the king of Israel, King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and the king of Edom went to consult with Elisha. Why are you coming to me? Elisha asked the king of Israel. Go to the pagan prophets of your father and mother. But King Joram of Israel said, No, for it was the Lord who called us 3 kings here, only to be defeated by the king of Moab. Elisha replied, As surely as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I wouldn't even bother with you, except for my respect for King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Now bring me someone who can play the harp. While the harp was being played, the power of the Lord came upon Elisha, and he said, This is what the Lord said. This dry valley will be filled with pools of water. You will see neither wind nor rain, says the Lord, but this valley will be filled with water. You will have plenty for yourself and your cattle and other animals. But this is only a simple thing for the Lord, for he will make you victorious over the army of Moab. You will conquer the best of their towns, even the fortified ones. You will cut down all their good trees, stop up all their springs, and ruin all their good land with stones. The next day, at about the time when the morning sacrifice was offered, water suddenly appeared. It was flowing from the direction of Edom, and soon there was water everywhere. Meanwhile, when the people of Moab heard about the 3 armies marching against them, they mobilized every man who was old enough to strap on a sword, and they stationed themselves along their border. But when they got up the next morning, the sun was shining across the water, making it appear red to the Moabites, like blood. It's blood, the Moabites exclaimed. The 3 armies must have attacked and killed each other. Let's go, men of Moab, and collect the plunder. When the Moabites arrived at the Israelite camp, the army of Israel rushed out and attacked them until they turned and ran. The army of Israel chased them into the land of Moab, destroying everything as they went. They destroyed the towns, covered their good land with stones, stopped up all the springs, and cut down all the good trees. Finally, only Kir Hareseth and its stone walls were left, but men with slings surrounded and attacked it. When the king of Moab saw that he was losing the battle, he led 700 of his swordmen, in a desperate attempt to break through the enemy lines near the king of Edom, but they failed. When the king of Moab took his oldest son, who would have been the next king, and sacrificed him as a burnt offering on the wall. So there was great anger against Israel, and the Israelites withdrew and returned to their own land. Footnote. Taking a first step toward recovery is not enough by itself. It was truly a positive move when Joram tore down the sacred pillar of Baal, but it did not constitute full spiritual recovery in any sense. Whatever motivated Joram to destroy the pillar was not heartfelt enough to bring about a complete break from idolatry. He had not come to the point of admitting his helplessness and turning to the true God of faith. Even a flirtation with recovery would often result in further intervention by God. Here, King Joram's foray into the wilderness of Edom brought him and his thirsty troops near the point of helplessness. In their predicament, they consulted Elisha, the prophet, for insight. He challenged Joram's idolatry and urged the desperate king to be aware of the godly influence of King Jehoshaphat of Judah. We should not ignore the godly people God has placed in our lives. They may be there to encourage us to take additional steps toward recovery. God had a battle plan devised for Joram. The king had only to admit he needed help. God was there to ensure the victory. God has a plan to rescue us. He provides the resources and guidance we need. We just need to admit that we are helpless and turn to Him for help. Chapter 4. Elisha helps a poor widow. One day the widow of a member of the group of prophets came to Elisha and cried out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know how he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come, threatening me to take my 2 sons as slaves. What can I do to help you?" Elisha asked. "Tell me, what do you have in the house?" "Nothing at all except a flask of olive oil," she replied. And Elisha said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go to your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled." So she did as she was told. The sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her, and then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what happened, he said to her, "Now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." Elisha and the woman from Shunem. One day Elisha went to the town of Shunem. A wealthy woman lived there, and she urged him to come to her home for a meal. After that, whenever he passed that way, he would stop there for something to eat. She said to her husband, "I am sure this man who stops in from time to time is a holy man of God. Let's build a small room for him on the roof and furnish it with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp. Then he will have a place to stay whenever he comes by." One day Elisha returned to Shunem, and he went up to his upper room to rest. he said to his servant Gehazi, "Tell the woman from Shunem I want to speak to her." When she appeared, Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tell her we appreciate the kind concern you have shown us. What can we do for you? Can we put a good word, a good word for you to the king or the commander of the army?" "No," she replied. "My family takes good care of me." Later, Elisha asked Gehazi, "What can we do for her?" Gehazi replied, "She doesn't have a son, and her husband is an old man." "Call her back again," Elisha told him. When the woman returned, Elisha said to her as she stood in the doorway, "Next year at this time you will be holding a son in your arms." "No, my lord," she cried. "O man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that." But sure enough, the woman soon became pregnant, and at that time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. One day, when her child was older, he went out to help his father, who was working with the harvesters. Suddenly he cried out, "My head hurts, my head hurts." His father said to one of the servants, "Carry him home to his mother." So the servant took him home, and his mother held him on her lap. But around noontime he died. She carried him up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, then shut the door and left him there. She sent a message to her husband, "Send one of the servants and a donkey so that I can hurry to the man of God and come right back." Why go today?" he asked. It is neither a new festival or a Shabbat." But she said, "I will be all right." So she said, "I will be all right." So she saddled the donkey and said to the servant, "Hurry, don't slow down unless I tell you to." As she approached the man of God at Mount Carmel, Elisha saw her, and in the distance he said to Gehazi, "Look, the woman from Shunem is coming. Run out to meet her and ask her, 'Is everything all right with you, your husband, and your child?'" "Yes," the woman told Gehazi, "everything is fine." But when she came to the man of God at the mountain, she fell to the ground before him and caught hold of his feet. Gehazi began to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her alone. She is deeply troubled, but the Lord has not told me what it is." Then she said, "Did I ask you for a son, my Lord? And didn't I say, 'Don't deceive me and get my hopes up'?" Then Elijah said to Gehazi, "Get ready to travel. Get my staffs and go. Don't talk to anyone along the way. Go quickly and lay the staff on the child's face." But the boy's mother said, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you surely live, I won't go home unless you go with me." So Elisha returned with her. Gehazi hurried on ahead and laid the staff on the child's face, but nothing happened. There was no sign of life. He returned to meet Elisha and told him, "The child is still dead." When Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead, lying there on the prophet's bed. He went in alone and shut the door behind him and prayed to the Lord. Then he lay down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, and his hands on the child's hands. And as he stretched out on him, the child's body began to grow warm again. Elijah got up, walked back and forth across the room once, and then stretched himself out again on the child. This time the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Then Elisha summoned Gehazi, "Call the child's mother," he said. And when she came in, Elisha said, "Here, take your son." She fell at his feet and bowed before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Then she took her son in her arms and carried him downstairs. Miracles during the famine. Elisha now returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in the land. One day, as the group of prophets was seated before him, he said to his servant, "Put a large pot on the fire and make some stew for the rest of the group." One of the young men went out into the field to gather herbs and come back with a pocket full of wild gourds. He shredded them and put them into the pot without realizing they were poisonous. Some of the stew was served to them, but after they had eaten a bite or two, they cried out, "Oh, man of God, there is poison in this stew." So they would not eat it. Elisha said, "Bring me some flour." Then he threw it into the pot and said, "Now it's all right. Go ahead and eat." And then it did not harm them. One day a man from Baal Shalisha. One day a man from Baal Shalisha brought the man of God a sack of fresh grain and 20 loaves of barley bread made from the first grain of his harvest. Elisha said, "Give it to the people so they can eat." "What?" his servant exclaimed. "Feed 100 people with only this?" But Elisha repeated, "Give it to the people so they can eat, for this is what the Lord says. Everyone will eat, and there will even be some left over. And when they gave it to the people, there was plenty for all and some left over, just as the Lord had promised." Footnote: people willing to pursue recovery can count on the fact that when they are at the end of the rope, God is holding on to them. He is the God of limited resources, who can provide incredibly when we are in need, as was true with the widow and her sons. God sometimes waits to act until the last minute in order to stretch our faith. Then, when He comes through, our faith in His power is strengthened for the battles ahead. Elisha did two amazing miracles in these verses. One, he promised that a woman unable to bear children would have a child. Two, after the child died, he brought him back to life. The God who performed these miracles is also able to provide all the power we need for recovery. Notice that God often uses people like Elijah to bring about renewed life we should be aware of. We should be aware of this, accepting God's gifts through the people chosen to help us along the way. We must remember too that God may also use us to touch the lives of others in need. Chapter 5. Healing, the healing of Naaman. The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. At this time, Aramean riders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to her mistress, "I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy." So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. "Go and visit the prophet," the king of Aram told him, "and I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel." So Naaman started out carrying as gift 750 pounds of silver. Okay. Ouch. Uh-oh. I lost the cap. Found it. Okay. 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, "With this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him from his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, "Am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard what the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him: "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elijah's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message: "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored, and you will be healed of your leprosy." But Naaman became angry and stalked away. "I thought he would certainly come out to meet me," he said. "I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of God, call the name of the Lord, his God, and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers in Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed?" So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you shouldn't certainly obey him when he says simply, 'Go and wash and be cured.'" So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him. And his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, as he was healed. And he was healed. Then Naaman and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Naaman said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant." But Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept any gift." And though Naaman urged him to take the gift, Elisha refused. Then Naaman said, "All right, but please allow me to load 2 of my mules with earth from this place, and I will take it back home with me." From now on, I will never again offer burnt offerings or sacrifices to any other god except the Lord. However, may the Lord pardon me in this one thing: when my master the king goes into the temple of the god Rimmon to worship, there are liens on my arm. May the Lord pardon me when I bow too. The smoke is coming this way, straight on my face. Right there. I don't care. I can still breathe. Then Naaman said, "All right, but please allow me to load my mules with earth from this place, and I will take it back home with me. From now on, I will never again offer burnt offerings or sacrifices to any other god except the Lord. However, may the Lord pardon me in this one thing. When my master, the king, goes into the temple of the god Rimmon to worship there and leans on my arm, may the Lord pardon me when I bow to." "Go in peace," Elisha said. So Naaman started home again. The greed of Gehazi. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, "My master should not have let this Aramean get away without accepting any of his gift. As surely as the Lord lives, I will chase after him and get something from him." So Gehazi set off after Naaman. So Gehazi running after him, he climbed down from his chariot and went to meet him. "Is everything all right?" Naaman asked. "Yes," Gehazi said, "but my master has sent to tell you that 2 young prophets from the hill country of Ephraim have just arrived. He would like 75 pounds of silver and 2 sets of clothing to give to them." "By all means, take twice as much silver," Naaman insisted. He gave him 2 sets of clothing, tied up the money in 2 bags, and sent 2 of his servants to carry the gifts for Gehazi. But when they arrived at the citadel, Gehazi took the gift from the servants and sent them back. Then he went in and hid the gift inside the house. When he went in to his master, Elisha asked him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "I haven't been anywhere," he replied. But Elisha asked him, "Don't you realize that I was there in spirit when Naaman stepped down from his chariot to meet you? And is this the time to receive money and clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and cattle, and male and female servants? Because you have done this, you and your descendants will suffer from Naaman's leprosy forever." When Gehazi left the room, he was covered with leprosy. His skin was white as snow. Footnote: people who are hurting deeply enough will try almost anything to find relief. For Naaman, the commander of the Aramean army, looking for help from a prophet in Israel was a desperate long shot. Naaman was willing to sacrifice prestige and wealth to find healing to his terrible disease. Naaman was healed of his leprosy, but not because he was willing to offer a reward. The real issue was not much it cost. It was more important that he went to the only one who could really help him, the one through God. The real issue was not how much it cost. It was more important that he went to the only one who could really help him, the one through God. The shameful example of Gehazi and the resulting consequences he faced should serve as a warning to us. Those of us in recovery need to be aware that there are people who will try to take advantage of us as we experience the joy of recovery. Those working in the recovery field need to be careful not to take advantage of people as they experience the excitement of recovery. God is never pleased with this kind of exploitation. Let's exploit this fire. Exploit. Exploit it. Da-da-da. We have a 12-step devotional. Step 1, a humble beginning. Bible reading 2 Kings 5:1-15. We admitted that we were powerless over our problems, that our life had become unmanageable. Okay, let's do this. Oops. I think I have to move my chair. It's going that way. It can be very humiliating to admit that we are powerless, especially if we are used to being in control. We may be powerful in some areas of our life, but out of control in terms of our addictive, compulsive behavior. If we refuse to admit our powerlessness, we may lose everything. That one unmanageable part may infect and destroy everything else. The experiences of Aramean army commander Naaman illustrate how this is true. He was a powerful military and political figure, a man of wealth, position, and power. He also had leprosy, which promised to bring about the loss of everything he held dear. Lepers are made outcasts from their families and from society. Ultimately, they face a slow, painful, and disgraceful death. Naaman heard about a prophet in Israel who could heal him. He found the prophet, and the prophet told him that in order to be healed, he needed to dip himself 7 times in the Jordan River. Naaman went away outraged, having expected that his power would buy him an instant and easy cure. In the end, however, he acknowledged his powerlessness, followed the instruction, and recovered completely. Our diseases are as life-threatening as the leprosy of Naaman's day. They slowly separate us from our families and lead toward the destruction of everything important to us. There is no instant or easy cure. The only answer is to admit our powerlessness, humble ourselves, and submit to the process that will eventually bring recovery. Chapter 6. The floating axe head. The floating axe head. One day the group of prophets came to Elisha and told him, "As you can see, this place where we meet with you is too small. Let's go down to the Jordan River where there are plenty of logs. There we can build a new place for us to meet." "All right," he told them, "go ahead." "Please come with us," someone suggested. "I will," he said, so he went with them. When they arrived at the Jordan, they began cutting down trees, but as one of them was cutting a tree, his axe head fell into the river. "Oh, sir," he cried, it was a borrowed axe." "Where did it fall?" the man of God asked. When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it into the water. At that spot, then the axe floated to the surface. "Grab it," Elisha said, and the man reached out and grabbed it. Elisha traps the Arameans. When the king of Aram was at war with Israel, he would confer with his officers and say, "We will mobilize our forces at such and such place." But immediately Elisha, the man of God, would warn the king of Israel, "Do not go near that place, for the Arameans are planning to mobilize their troops there." So the king of Israel would send word to the place, indicated by the man of God. Time and again, Elisha warned the king so that he would be on alert there. The king of Aram became very upset over this. He called his officers together and demanded, "Which of you is a traitor? Who has been informing the king of Israel of my plans?" "It's not us, my lord, the king." One of the officers replied, Elisha, the prophet in Israel, tells the king of Israel even the words you speak in the privacy of your bedroom. "Go and find out where he is," the king commanded, "so I can send troops to seize him." And the report came back, Elisha is at Dothan. So one night the king So one night the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to surround the city. When the servant of the man of God got up early the next morning and went outside, there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. "Oh, sir, what will we do now?" the young man cried to Elisha. "Don't be afraid," Elisha told him, "for there are more on our side than on theirs." Then Elisha prayed, "Oh Lord, open his eyes and let him see." The Lord opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. As the Aramean army advanced toward him, Elisha prayed, "Oh Lord, please make them blind." So the Lord struck them with blindness, and as Elisha had asked. Then Elisha went out and told them, "You have come the wrong way. This isn't the right city. Follow me, and I will take you to the man you're looking for." And he led them to the city of Samaria. As soon as they had entered Samaria, Elijah prayed, "Oh Lord, now open their eyes and let them see." So the Lord opened their eyes, and they discovered they were in the middle of Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he shouted to Elisha, My father, should I... "Of course not," Elisha replied. "Do we kill prisoners of war? Give them food and drink and send them home again to their master." So the king made a great feast for them and then sent them home to their master. After that, the Aramean raiders stayed away from the land of Israel. I'm going to leave it at that for now. It's not the end of the chapter, but I think... Okay. Ben-Hadad besieges Samaria. Sometime later, however, King Ben-Hadad of Aram mustered his entire army and besieged Samaria. As a result, there was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 80 pieces of silver and a cup of dove's dung sold for 5 pieces of silver. One day, as the king of Israel was walking along the wall of the city, a woman called to him, "Please help me, my lord, the king." He answered, "If the Lord doesn't help you, what can I do? I have neither food from the threshing floor nor wine from the press to give you." But then the king asked, "What is the matter?" She replied, "This woman said to me, Come on, let's eat your son today. Then we will eat my son tomorrow." So we cooked my son and ate him. And the next day I said to her, "Kill your son so we can eat him." But she has hidden her son. When the king heard this, he tore his clothes in despair. And as the king walked along the wall, the people would see that he was wearing burlap under his robe next to his skin. "May God strike and even kill me if I don't separate Elisha's head from his shoulders this very day." The king bowed. Elisha was sitting in his house with the elders of Israel when the king sent a messenger to summon him. But before the messenger arrived, Elisha said to the elders, "A murderer has sent a man to cut off my head. When he arrives, shut the door and keep him out. We will soon hear his master's steps following him." While Elisha was still saying this, the messenger arrived, and the king said, This misery is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer?" That's it for chapter 7. For chapter 6. Footnote. By helping the prophets retrieve the borrowed axe head, God reveals his concern for the day-to-day needs of his people. He also showed how concerned he was for the maintenance of relationships. In ancient times, an axe head was extremely valuable. Losing such an item would be resulted in conflict between the borrower and the lender. So Elisha's miracle helped the young prophets not only by their building project, but also with the maintenance of their relationships. Maintaining a healthy relationship is essential to the recovery process. God will support us in those relationships if we are willing to ask Him for help. Elijah's servant was terrified by the awesome Aramean army because he couldn't see the help available to him. He was totally unaware of the great army of heavenly soldiers on his side. As we face the difficult task of recovery, we may be tempted to give up our enemies. Our enemies may seem too powerful to overcome, but as we begin to see through the eyes of faith, we will discover the awesome power available to us. God's power is far greater than that of any enemy we might face. If we admit our powerlessness and trust God for help, we will find His power more than sufficient for our needs. All right, I am going to leave that for now because I ran out of memory in my phone. Okay, you guys, thank you for reading the Bible with me, and hope you enjoy the fire pit, bonfire,